upcoming months with BEPS?
Implementation. It's the time for implementation for both companies and governments. So the governments have started taking action. You can see that in Europe with the directive to address BEPS issues, which incorporates some of our outputs. But you can see that in many other countries, which are working on country-by-country reporting, which are introducing different of the measures adopted through BEPS, but also on transfer pricing, where there were big changes, but also on tax treaties with the negotiation of the multilateral instrument to incorporate into bilateral treaties the tax treaty-related BEPS measures. We have 96 countries negotiating the multilateral instrument, which should be open for signature by year-end. So we are moving to implementation, and not only by OECD and G20 countries, but by all other interested and committed jurisdictions, thus the inclusive framework that we're building at the request of the G20, and we'll have the first meeting of this inclusive framework at the end of June and 1st of July in Kyoto. So, you know, implementation, broad and consistent implementation is the next step.
Yeah.
It's a very significant step as regards how fast the implementation is. It's not a major step worldwide because the major step was the agreement by all countries, G20, OECD, of the BEPS package. But it shows that within the European Union, 28 countries so far, we do have a consistent and quick implementation. Country-by-country reporting was incorporated into a directive adopted in a few weeks. I think that's record timing for the adoption of a directive. And now we have this directive against base erosion and profit shifting, which is likely to be adopted during the Dutch presidency, with more to come. I mean, we hear that the European Union is working on an impact assessment on Action 12, which is about mandatory disclosure regimes, and maybe on some other aspects, like Action 14 to eliminate double taxation. So you can see that everywhere in the world it's being implemented, and in the European space, where you have 28 countries, it's going to get consistent and fast implementation through the directives. I think this clearly makes the case that we need to make progress. I was very interested to see that the reaction to the Panama Papers was not about nothing has happened and we're in a state of despair and nothing will ever happen, but people were quite constructive and positive. There was the recognition that a lot had happened, and precisely it was concentrating on Panama and in Panama, because Panama was one of the remaining countries which had not committed. And since the Panama Papers, Panama has committed, and we are confident that now they will join the international community, they will change their mindset and have a much more positive approach. But we also have the recognition that much more needs to be done. One, to make sure that the new standard, automatic exchange of information, is properly implemented. And this will start in a few months, the 1st January 2017 or 2018, depending on the country. So we need to make sure that this happens. And we are building the pipes, all the IT technology which is required, plus the technical support for countries. We're helping the countries to pass their legislation. We're promoting international agreement to make sure that this automatic exchange of information happens with everyone. So that's what we need to do. And in addition to that, we need to work on a more effective beneficial ownership implementation. So there is a standard. It's the warm body at the end of the chain. That's the beneficial owner. And this information today must be available. It may not be, because tax authorities and other authorities do not necessarily have a direct access to this information. And that's the new frontier. That's why the UK took some initiative, and that's why broadly about public registries and so, and that's why broadly we need to make sure that we have a more focused approach on the effective implementation of that standard. That's the new frontier which is ahead of us, and I think that the common reporting standard, automatic exchange of information, will help, because it obliges the financial institutions and other intermediaries to check the beneficial ownership actively to be able to process the information. So here we may have the start of a real implementation of this great standard, but which so far has been too light in terms of implementation. So a lot of work to do, but the world has changed. I mean, 10 years ago, bank secrecy was almost the rule. Yeah. Today, it's over. Or if it's not over, we'll check. If a taxpayer wants to hide assets, they will have to go through criminal channels, because it's going to be illegal everywhere. It's going to be tracked everywhere. And in that sense, I think we've changed the world.